Well, big news. Today, Ghana's economy expanded by 4.8% in the second quarter of this year, higher than the 3.4% recorded in the first quarter. The appreciable growth rate was driven by manufacturing, crops, mining, information and communication technology, as well as the education subsectors. The services sector expanded more than the national growth average, the national growth rate, I should say. Now, here's government statistician Professor Samuel Kobneni speaking to the press a while ago.
Perspective provisional estimate GDP oil was 132,263.5 million, and from a non-oil perspective GDP for the second quarter of 2022 in current terms stood at 123,080.4 million Ghana cedis. From a constant perspective, once we've discounted for the effect of price changes, GDP for the second quarter in absolute terms stood at 41,205.5 million, indicating a growth rate of 4.8%. The growth rate of 4.8% indicates a 0.6 percentage point higher growth rate relative to what was recorded for the same period in the second quarter of 2021. From a non-oil perspective, in absolute terms, GDP stood at 38,976.1 million, indicating that from a non-oil perspective, GDP growth rate was 6.2% relative to the 6.6% that was recorded for the same period in the second quarter of 2021. From a sectoral perspective, we see the services sector maintaining its dominance with a contribution of 45.8%, followed by the industry sector 32.1%, and the agricultural sector contributing 22.1%. This culminates in GDP basic prices 123,802.8 million Ghana cedis. Adding on indirect taxes culminates to a GDP current prices of 132,263.5 million GDP provisional current prices.
Economist and Director of the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research, Professor Peter Quartey, joins us on Zoom to make sense of these latest numbers. Good afternoon to you, sir. From 3.4% in the first quarter to 4.8% in the second, that is very impressive. Safe to say the economy is recovering?
Well, certainly. I mean, despite all the challenges, I mean, if we could record this growth rate, it tells you we have an economy that if we do things right, we'll be able to enhance our economic performance, improve livelihood, and move out of poverty. But for me, what is quite striking is the fact that it is manufacturing that grew, and that grew by significant proportions. And that is encouraging because that is where you find the jobs. Then also non-oil grew by 6.2%. It's quite encouraging that we are not growing, we are a bit diversified compared to other countries that depended so much on oil in terms of growth. But we are quite diversified and non-oil is growing at a very significant proportion.
Yeah, you mentioned that if we do things right, what do you think the government is doing differently and how can we consolidate these gains?
Well, I think we can enhance some of the programs. For instance, irrigation, one district, one dam, one village, one dam, all of that. They are good initiatives, but I don't think we have maximized the gains from this. Our irrigated land is very small compared to the proportion of arable land. We haven't done much in terms of supporting the value chain process, warehousing. So when the harvest or the rains are good, harvests are good, we are not able to store, we are not able to process. So I believe government should process more, put more resources into enhancing warehousing, enhancing processing facilities within the country, and supporting large-scale commercial farmers to pull up the small-scale farmers along the chain.
And when we hear news like this, we talk about the trickle-down effect, people asking, well, if you say the economy is growing, why are we not feeling it? Prices are still high on the market. We are finding it difficult to make a living, people would say. What would you say to that?
Yes, when you grow, some sectors grow, so it's like rain. If you find yourself where there is rain, you get wet. Same with growth. If the sector you find yourself working is not growing, then of course you will not feel the benefit. But having said that, When you grow, it's the rich that become richer, and the poor sometimes get poorer. And you see there's a high level of inequality within the country. So there has to be conscious effort to redistribute. So things like the LEAP and other kinds of subsidies are very much important. Yes, agric is growing, but not growing as much as our food demand situation is. And we also know that quite a number of West African or African countries source their food supply from Ghana. So you find agric sector growing, but prices are still high. We also find the issue of transportation, that although agric is growing, transport cost is high. The fuel price increases is affecting transport cost. And therefore, by the time the food gets to the market, it is quite expensive. And you find high cost of living, high prices of food items on the market. And lastly, one cannot run away from the fact that there is some profiteering within the system. You find that traders take advantage, and if you look at farm gate prices and you look at how much they are sold on the market, the margin is just too high, and you find you can clearly see that there is profiteering also occurring, and that is also affecting the prices we see on the market.
My last question will be about the MPC meeting, which has kick-started today. And as we try to find ways to curtail inflation, what is your advice to the central bank? What should they be considering, whether or not to increase the policy rate? We know the effects of that as well.
Yeah, I think the Bank of Ghana should be aware that they cannot fight inflation alone. This monetary policy alone cannot fight inflation. You need also fiscal policy. You need government to also come in, or the fiscal authorities to also come in. So continually increasing the policy rates, although the idea is to mop up excess liquidity, the idea is also get depositors to keep their monies in the bank instead of using it to buy dollars or other currencies as a store of value. That would also hurt the private sector, hurt borrowers. So you ought to strike a good balance. Otherwise, we'll continue to chase inflation with the policy rate, and that will not inure to the benefit of manufacturers or borrowers. We ought to strike a good balance. And that will require the fiscal authorities to also put in non-fiscal measures. Because inflation is not due to monetary measures or demand pressures. It's also due to supply side constraints. We need to produce more, we need to enhance production, and that should be done to also fight inflation.
So you advise against increasing the rate?
I do, and if it's going to be increased, it has to be very marginal. But I think for now, it will be ideal to keep the rates at the current level for now.
All right, Professor Peter Quartey, Director of ISE, I appreciate your time with us. Always a pleasure to speak with you. Now, the Institute of Economic Affairs is projecting an unchanged policy rate of 22% as the Monetary Policy Committee of the Bank of Ghana meets today to review the economy. You heard me speaking about it with Prof. Now, according to economic think tank IEA, the policy rate cannot solve the current rise in inflation, and therefore any increase in the central bank's lending rate will be disastrous for the economy. Charles Nixon-Yeboah has more in this report.
In a statement, the IEA said it expects the Bank of Ghana to work closely with the government to adopt additional targeted measures to fight inflation. Inflation shot up to 33.9% in August, a rate the economic think tank said was driven by supply and cost factors, particularly fuel and the exchange rate. This, it pointed out the inadequacy of the inflation targeting framework in dealing with these supply and cost drivers of inflation, especially at the primary level. To this end, it called for collaboration between the managers of the fiscal and monetary economies to target directly the underlying causes of the nation's inflation. It emphasized the recommended interventions which aim to boost supply and the introduction of subsidies. It cited the example of countries including major economies that depend on the inflation targeting framework, resorting to intervention to deal with the supply factors largely driven by the Russia-Ukraine war.
All right, let's turn to other news now. The chief executive of the Ghana Cocoa Board, Joseph Boahen-Edu, has disclosed that Ghana has missed its projected cocoa production target for the 2021-2022 crop season. Cocoa Board was hoping to maintain its 1 million metric tons production of cocoa beans after breaking a 10-year production record in the previous season. But speaking to journalists after marking Cocoa Board's 75th anniversary and launch of the 2022 Cocoa Day, Mr. Bwai Edu disclosed that activities of Galamsey affected cocoa output for the season.
In the previous season, Cocoa Board broke a 10-year record by producing over 1,060,000 metric tons. The cocoa sector regulator was seeking to increase the feed, but according to its chief executive, circumstances such as Galamsey and the cocoa tree replacement exercise affected production.
Galamsey is impacting. The other thing is that it's last year that we scaled up the cutting of diseased trees. Previously, we were doing it on a limited scale in Western North, the Sefi area. But last year, we decided to cut it to what we call the rehabilitation program. We decided to scale it to all the regions. So, Eastern, Central, Volta, in every cocoa region, we are now cutting cocoa trees. So even the trees that were giving us whatever minimal production, we've cut them. So that also accounts for some of the losses some of the shortage that we are going to have.
Delivering a lecture to mark the 75th anniversary, a former vice-chancellor of the University of Ghana, Professor Ebenezer Odro-Owusu, called for new methods in cocoa production that will protect the environment as well as guarantee increase in production.
Our land tenure system. We cannot run away from the fact that we have allowed the exploitation of gold and other minerals to destroy our environment and taken away from us the future of the nation in terms of sustained agriculture, especially the plantation crops, which obviously includes cocoa. How long will it take us to reclaim the destroyed lands to secure the future of our unborn generations? Walk around. It's just an eyesore, but we have allowed it. What kind of future are we creating for ourselves? Now, if you are not careful, I'm not a prophet of doom, but we will soon lose all arable lands and make the nation over-dependent on food imports to sustain our food security concerns.
The 2022 National Cocoa Day will be held in Suhum in the Eastern region. The ceremony, which will usher in the 2022-2023 cocoa crop season, will be launched by President Akufo-Addo on October 1, 2022.
Now, players within the transportation industry have been entreated to be innovative in the wake of the inconsistencies in fuel prices. Country Manager for Trips Ghana, Isidore Potofe, assessed that additional investment is required to grow the transportation industry. At a press conference to mark the 3-year anniversary of Trips, he asked stakeholders to take advantage of the absence of government policy to advance the sector.
To address climate change challenges and offer a more sustainable method of public transportation, details of the start of an electric bus program for its passengers in Ghana were discussed at the press conference. The new technology-enabled transportation service offered by the Corporation to business and organizations is intended to boost the economy of Ghana. According to the company's country manager in a conversation with Joy Business, this is significant in light of fluctuating fuel prices.
We are deploying vehicles on the road, which means that we are investing directly or indirectly in job creation for drivers, job creation for value-added service providers like mechanics, and especially with the electric vehicle e-bus program that we're currently deploying, we're creating an additional economy where people would need to be trained in how to handle electric vehicles. And so for us, these are the 3 things that defines a trip. I think that the lack of policy is an opportunity to innovate, and that's what we did. And I must say that the government or the policy environment is not stifling of innovation. In other markets, what would have happened is that you receive a letter from the government saying that, hey, do not stop operating this service. But in our case, it was not the case. This happened in Kenya, it happened in Nigeria, but it was not the case in Ghana, which is why I believe that it's an enabling environment. But for beyond regulation, there are questions around the financial viability of the industry that we need to address. The rising price of fuel is a nightmare of every operator in industry. Government seems unable to address the issue, and so for us, our solution is the deployment of e-buses, which they are also working on themselves to have a policy position.
General Secretary for the Ghana Private Road Transport Union, Godfred Abelbiri, indicated that the adoption of electric buses will support the sector.
It's an idea that we had gone to listen to the consultants for the first time at the Ministry of Transport office there, and we also had the idea that it will be good. And then the test even vehicles were brought, and we saw that Ghana, if we adopt him, it will help all of us. Just that we need practically some of them, and then where this recharge booths will be there, so that even the vehicles move from here to Tamale and then halfway the batteries run out. What happens? It is just like how we have dotted fuel stations on all the stretches where we go, and at any point where you think you run out of fuel, you can go there and refill.
Electric buses bring with them a wide range of advantages, where the most important one is a reduction of air pollution levels.
Now, to the Ashanti region, where block manufacturers have expressed their dissatisfaction with the quality of raw materials on the market. They observe a reduction in the quality and size of essential materials such as cement and iron rods is compromising the standard of their block production, ultimately affecting their profit gains. Players in the construction industry have urged the Ghana Standards Authority to strengthen its surveillance of building products on the market. There's more in this report.
Antiquated buildings erected amongst contemporary settlements have proven to stand the test of time, which according to experts owe mainly to the quality of raw materials employed in their construction. In 2018, the government, in collaboration with the Ghana Standards Authority, established the National Building Code to ensure the safety of all public, residential and industrial buildings across the country. The policy aims at streamlining actors in the Ghanaian construction industry with a common standard for public safety and protection, structural efficiency and environmental integrity.
Those are who produce your raw materials. Our standard systems is very relaxed for them. They give us anything.
But block manufacturers argue recent metrology and quality of raw materials for building works are failing to meet the standard. Emmanuel Ayingura Awene is manager for Akademi Blocks Factory.
The sand, the quarry products that we procure, cement, iron rods, all the standards have been compromised. Now their influx of cement is good for the economy, but one of the challenges we have identified of late is that the weight itself is not that good. The last test that we did, we were getting between 45 to 48 kilograms. But the description is there that it's 50 kilograms. It also affects the design, those who do works with volume. Because they may think that, one bag of cement is 50 kilograms. Perhaps this is the dimension, so let me just add on this other materials to get the products. So they will just add it up without weighing the actual weight of what was supplied. So at the end of the day, there could be some form of deficiency in the products that the person have produced.
In response to concerns raised at a sensitization workshop, Acting Director of the Middle Belt of the Ghana Standards Authority, Samuel Kofi Frimpong, assured of stringent measures to rid the market of substandard products.
They've given a lot of complaints, which we've taken them down. Ghana Standards Authority, we are customer focused. So what we do is that we take all complaints and then we act on them. The complaints that they've given about the quarry dust and those things, our people will quickly go on the ground, and then some of them to contact them, because it looks like some of them even know the place more than us. So we'll contact them, they will give us the details. As they give us the details, then we take the action, because we have to test and make sure that it meets the standard. If it doesn't meet the standard, I'll tell you, there will be penalties and there will be shutdown or something of that sort to make sure that the industry is sanitized.
Meanwhile, the industry players are calling for a review of policies guiding block certification. They argue the exorbitant cost for the certification does not commensurate with the present market environment and may have a tolling effect on their business.
The law that was passed, there wasn't any proper consulting. What if you had to ask them, and when we queried them, they told us that the consulting they did was 20 years ago, which was 2000. That's more than 20 years ago. As of that time, the quality of the raw materials used for the production was different. The environment was different. They didn't do any proper market analysis. Back then, we didn't have competition as we have now. Now, there are a lot of industrial people producing the blocks. So I feel all those things should have been done. If they had to pass the law, they should have come to us, consulted us to know that, oh, okay, this is the way forward. They just brought us certain requirements for us to do.
For JoyNews, Emmanuel Bright-Kweku reporting.
Well, still in the Ashanti region, traders at KGTR Market in Kumasi are unhappy with management for defaulting in the payment of electricity bills. The traders claim to have paid over 80% of the total debt owed to the ECG, but staff were at the market to disconnect power, causing the displeasure of traders. Here's more.
3 months ago, the ECG cut power at the KGTR market. Businesses were at standstill for 7 days. The traders had insisted on accessing separate meters as a condition to offset their accumulated bills. But after an engagement with the Kumasi City Mayor, the traders agreed to honor payment. Per an arrangement, the traders claim management of the market has collected 4 million out of the 5.4 million Ghana cedis owed ECG. They were therefore surprised when staff of ECG attempted disconnecting power after the almost 80% payment.
ECG and form penny for Esma Majuma for Anka Mubabi chat and Canyoning. And no Emma Yamu says, Sikana, a dread for your chairman management, and young could do ECG for her. Eti ema akandifo no ni management no ekohia ma yebusa omo hunu sentia sika no enkoye na omo kire yen se omo e check bi koy na Ghana Commercial Bank for enya technical problem bi intina ECG for entimi enyi sika no.
Ruben Ami is the secretary of the Traders Association.
As we speak, just this morning, ECG had even confirmed that we should be up and doing paying our bills, and that they have ordered for meters for us, over 10,000 meters for the KGTR market. So therefore we should pay our bills. And yesterday, luckily enough, we were lucky that ECG had not come to disconnect our power. Why? Because we had defaulted on the payment plan after they came to disconnect our power in June. For us traders, what we are saying is that we will disagree with anybody who say traders have not paid enough to defray the cost.
Ruben is accusing the management of the facility of misappropriation of the funds. The internally generated fund is the only source of funding in managing the market, which is basically through market tolls and service charges.
All right, before we go, here is your money tip on Money Lab.
Hi everyone, welcome once again to Money Lab. My name is Yvonne Seshi. Last week, we spoke about working capital and why it's important for businesses. Today, we'll look at what factoring is and how it can be used by businesses to improve their working capital. Factoring, which is commonly referred to as invoice discounting, is a financial arrangement in which a business will sell its account receivables or invoices to a third party, in this case, the bank, to meet its short-term liquidity needs. This arrangement allows businesses to obtain immediate cash or money from a financial institution on account of monies owed to the business from its customers for sales made on credit. Thank you for joining me once again. It was a pleasure having all of you.
Let's check the headlines on our website, myjoyonline.com/business. We have news, our top story today: economy expands by 4.8% in Q2 of this year. Also, it will be disastrous for economy if policy rate is increased. That's according to the IEA. There's more on myjoyonline.com/business. My name is Daryl Kwawu. Thanks for watching. Stay with us here on JoyNews.